Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast. This is your podcast for local news, strategies, and interviews in the real estate market of Greater Vancouver. I'm your host, Cameron Manning. All right, so welcome. We're going to be talking episode 2 here. Shift happens. Get over it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a market shift. Whether this shift is going to be a long shift or a short shift, it's to be seen. But we're noticing that properties are staying on the market longer. We're not seeing the multiple offers that we used to see. Buyers are not as aggressive in the market, but there's still lots of opportunity for both buyers and sellers if you know how to adjust during a shifting market. And to help me out with this week's episode, I brought in a guest speaker here. I'd like to introduce everyone to Mark George. Now, Mark George is a real estate agent on the Kelly Fry team who works closely with me. We both are investment realtors and very capable in what to do in terms of marketing for a shifting market. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cameron.
Appreciate having you here. All right, so we're going to be talking about, again, shift happens. Let's start by having a quick chat on what causes the shift. So what, in your opinion, are some of the reasons that we're starting to see this shifting market?
So I think in this particular shifting market, it's a couple of things. One, there's been a lot of government intervention recently.
Ain't that the truth?
New rule changes, new taxes, stress tests, and those sorts of things. As well, interest rates have slowly been creeping up as well. I believe they've gone up 4 times in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, in fact, just last week they went up a quarter point again, right? Which
Yes.
Then the media is now blowing up and interest rates are on the rise and all these things.
Fear, lots of fear in the market. Headlines, of course, play to that fear. However, there's still opportunities for pretty much everyone out there if you know what to do about it.
Well, exactly. Now, really it comes down to the main cause of this shifting market, and it kind of boils down into any market, is supply and demand, right? So
Absolutely.
we've seen a significant increase. Like, you watch the numbers quite regularly. What's kind of been the trend in all the areas right now?
So what I've been seeing in the numbers is inventory is up. The average days that it's taking for a property to sell are up. However, prices are also up.
So prices aren't actually decreasing, but we're just seeing that there's more listings hitting the market, which means buyers have choice, but the property value is still rising. That means we're not at like record high levels of inventory at this point.
No, I believe we're at roughly a 3-year high at the moment. So
But we had a 3-year low, historic low.
Exactly. The market has been insane since about 2015, 2016, as we've seen, sometimes we were seeing 40% increases in the price of a home over the course of 12 months, which is just unheard of.
Yeah, that it's almost unstable at that point. You can't continue that growth going forward year after year after year.
No, not at all.
I mean, more stable growth in a Canadian economy is somewhere between like 3 and 5% in most cases. Vancouver's a little different, so maybe we'll see like 7, 8, 9%. And that's still strong growth in the market if we continue to see that, right?
Absolutely. The thing is, people have kind of gotten used to, you place a sign on the lawn and 30 seconds later someone's bought your house and 10 multiple offers, and that's just not the case anymore. However, it still seems to be the expectation of some.
And I think it's due in part because, yeah, that's what they're used to, and they haven't adjusted. The market's adjusting, but sellers are not adjusting yet to that change in the reality, right? Mm-hmm. But it's going to become a more significant change as people continue to try to hold out. So, I mean, end of the day, we're talking the government intervention. Maybe the government's going to be patting themselves on the back saying, we finally did it, we slowed the market. But really, it's just boiling down to that basic economics. Buyers have choice now. So, and then the media, of course, doesn't do anyone justice. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, we're trying to give you the realities of what's happening out there. We're not giving you headlines, oh, the market's slowing down. In fact, in both our opinion, I think you'd agree with this, there's still lots of opportunity. In fact, I think there's better opportunity now for buyers and sellers in this market than there was before.
Absolutely. There's actually choice in this market.
There's choice, and you can go back to normal real estate. In fact, we can negotiate now.
I know,
right?
It's shocking.
It's shocking. Well, I mean, we've been in an auction mode now for nearly 3 years, and I mean, that's, in my opinion, just ludicrous because as a buyer, we are having what was called buyer fatigue, right?
Yeah.
And, the funny thing is, the media would always talk about how the poor buyer has to go and make 10 offers before they finally get one if they're lucky. And while I do agree that sucks, but as realtors, it's almost doubly exhausting because we're doing that for every single client. And when you got 9 or 10 clients at a time losing, that buyer fatigue like quantifies on the agent. Like it's.
A lot of people may not realize that we take on a lot of what our buyers or sellers are going through. They come to us as a confidant and they tell us how they're feeling, and we have to work through those issues with them. You know, they're frustrated. They got a place to live. They've sold their home. They're going to be homeless.
Essentially,
they need to find a place.
We're not just a real estate agent marketer. We're also like psychiatrists and
marriage counselor.
Marriage counselor. Yeah, totally. I mean, we're like, okay, lie down. Tell me how you feel when you lost that offer.
Yeah. We don't just do that for one person. We might do that for 5 or 6 or 10 different people at a time.
And sometimes in one day.
Yes.
Like by the time we go home, it's like just turn off the phone and crash. Like it's hilarious. So honestly, this is going to create less especially for the buyers out there. This is good opportunity with the slowing market that you're not going to have that necessarily buyer fatigue. You can actually go out and look and make offers and negotiate a little bit. But it's still, again, now everyone's like, okay, well, what about the sellers? I mean, I want to just put my home on the market and know it's sold. Well, there's still ways to do that, and it's really going to come down to how you're working with your agent, and are you listening to your agent? That's the big thing, because now more than ever, you're going to have to rely on a real estate agent to help you out, because our job is to study the market. And like I said, Mark does it best. Like, that guy looks at the stats. He's got the numbers inside and out. He gives us sheets around the office, like, here's where the stats are, which is awesome. So then I know what I'm looking at too. That's where you're going to need to rely on your agent to give you the advice to properly price your property, do what you need to do to make sure it looks good and you're adding value. So let's talk maybe a little bit of tips right now. We're going to move for just sellers right now. So buyers, just hold on a little bit. We'll be talking about how you could take advantage of this market. But sellers, let's talk about how you can still make sure you get the top dollar for your property, even in a shifting market. So one thing to start with, Mark, I guess would be, buyers are now looking for the best value being provided from a unit for the best price, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's no longer throw a dart at a dartboard and whatever the highest price is that you want to list it for, you're going to get. Mm-hmm. You now have to be strategic. So let's talk about ways that you can be strategic in your pricing.
For sure. So when you're going out and looking at properties, the buyers, they give us a criteria. So most of the properties we're looking at are relatively similar as far as locations and style and type of property. So how do you decide what's value between one and the next? In the past, it was, okay, well, we'll make an offer on this one, and if we lose, then we'll do the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until we eventually win one. That's not the case anymore. The buyers are actually able to take a little bit of time and choose the one that they like the best. And things that we can't control, stuff like location and whatnot, orientation in a building, those things are out of our control. But things we can control, how does the property show? Is it clean? Is it neat? Is it staged if it's a vacant property? Does it smell funny?
Yeah, I've smelled those ones before, even with vacant properties.
Exactly.
What is this lingering smell in here?
Exactly. I mean, and when you live in a property every day, chances are we don't notice what our own home smells like.
It's true.
But, cat owners probably have a litter box somewhere. It probably smells like cat pee. Whether you want to believe that or not, maybe your kid spilled milk behind the couch 3 weeks ago and the place smells like sour milk, but you're used to it. Things like that. That's where we come in. We can bring in also additional help like stagers or declutterers.
So, yeah, totally. I mean, in our team, what we offer for our clients is a 2-hour staging consultation, and that comes out of our own pocket. I mean, we pay for that as part of your initial marketing to make sure we help you prep your home for putting it on the market. So, realtors, if you're looking, connect with a stager, so someone that you can work with. Again, you don't have to pay for the whole thing, but at least bring in a consultation just for the decluttering aspect of it. I mean, another thing to do too is when you're looking at quote unquote staging, take down the personal photos, take down the personal effects. Yep. It's you're trying to pass this on, and a buyer, when they're walking through the property, they want to feel like they live there. They want to start imagining how they're going to raise their family, and you kind of kill that ambiance, that mood, when they look up and they see a graduation picture of someone else's kid. So again, suddenly they go out of their head, and it's no longer their future home. It's now somebody else's home. So a couple things like that. These are simple things that you can do at the beginning without even hiring a stager. But again, bringing in that consultation is a great way to say, okay, here's how we're going to rearrange this furniture because maybe it's going to open up this aspect of the living room. Or here's what we're going to do, put out these every time, like maybe some dishes with a rolled up napkin on it, so that when people are coming through, it makes it a presentation versus just this is a house, right? I mean, when you're walking through a show suite, they're always very well professionally staged with all those accoutrements, right?
Yeah, it's got to look inviting. It's got to say welcome.
Exactly.
Welcome home. I mean, this is your place, and this is, where you could be. This could be your family sitting at this dining table that's nicely set up for whatever.
Exactly.
A few other things that clients might want to look at, sellers particularly, and sometimes this is a bit of a tougher conversation to have because of emotional attachment and whatnot, but great granddad's ashes probably don't need to be on the mantelpiece
Yep.
during showings. If you're religious, the shrine might turn some people off. I've been into homes where there's, like almost a little shrine for whatever the religious belief is, and that's fine. But again, buyers coming through are going to look at those things and maybe not feel quite as home.
Mm-hmm.
And they're tougher conversations to have. I get that because there's a lot of connection there,
But again, it's the end goal is you want to sell for the maximum profit that you can. And if you're not presenting that property in the best neutral light for that buyer to imagine themselves living there, then they're either going to, one, say, well, I still like the place enough, but it's not quite what I want. I'm going to lowball the offer. Now you're getting these low offers. And again, versus properly cleaning it and staging it, you might then say, oh, you know what? I really, really like this place compared to the other 4 that I saw. Yeah, I'll still offer on it, but you're probably going to get a closer to ask offer, or maybe even full ask, because they want to make sure they nab that one, even in a buyer's market. So,
Absolutely.
So definitely keep that in mind. Like staging and decluttering is huge. I mean, the other big thing is just coming down to your pricing, right? So working with your agent on pricing is going to be huge. Looking at what you're comparing at, and it's not just what's sold, because I find a lot of people, they say, well, my neighbor sold for this is what I should sell for. That's great, but at the same time, you got to look at your competition on the market. Look at what has sold, look at what has expired and didn't sell, as well as look at what's on the market right now and their current days on market, because all of it kind of adds into it. Okay, this property didn't sell and it expired. Why? Maybe the price was too high. They weren't adding enough value. It was total clutter. They were asking $25,000 too high, and it was like people couldn't see past the garbage. It could be that, this person in your eyes might be, oh, my property is worth 10 times more than my neighbor's because I added this one feature.
Yep.
That's great, but did you add that feature for yourself or for future buyers buying the property? Because just because you like that feature doesn't mean there's actual value to it in the home.
Absolutely. Just because you put down high-end Italian marble tiles and you love it doesn't mean the person who's buying it is going to love high-end Italian marble on the floor. Maybe they wanted carpet.
Well, exactly. And everyone has different views on that. So looking at what is actually being added to attract buyers versus what you added yourself is going to be the key factor. And I know a lot of sellers are going to argue with their realtor about it. Well, I added this and it cost me this much. But again, it doesn't necessarily add that value in the eyes of the buyer. So it's going to be a harsh conversation that you're going to have, and it's going to hurt. Believe me, it's going to hurt. They say, oh, I love it. Well, I'm sorry, but the next person coming in might not. So it's the reality that it is.
Yeah.
And then 2, looking at what's on the market right now is key, because you don't want to be the highest property on the market.
No.
At the end of the day, if you are, everything else is going to sell because they're offering better price for the same value potentially.
Absolutely. I mean, if prices aren't climbing like they have been, you don't want to be the one that's chasing the market down, always a few $1,000s behind where the market actually is, because you're going to be forever reducing and never actually catching up to what's actually happening.
I mean, it's really the same thing we were doing in a seller's market, right? We were doing what's called future pricing. So we looked at what had sold and what's active, and we say, well, based on if we hit the market, maybe we can increase the price by an extra $10,000 over what things are selling, because the market is going up and we probably will get it. But it's the same concept in the reverse direction. We might want to price it a little lower than what something is just sold for if we see that direction in the market, right? If things are continuing to go down. Now, right now, we're not seeing necessarily the drop. As you were just saying, the prices are still going up, or still showing an upward trend, but they're not going as fast. So maybe we want to be just priced just under where the recent market is sold to generate the interest. Because at the end of the day, your goal is to get out of that property and move on. Go to your next home. Go to your next
Absolutely. And
next
bear in mind,
location.
if you're selling your property for what you believe to be $5,000 or $10,000 less of what you think market value is, if you're also buying, you're likely going to realize that on the other end, because
Oh, totally.
if prices end up going down or flattening or whatever, it's going to be across the board for the sellers and the buyers. So it's, at the end of the day, it could be a bit of a wash.
Yeah, totally.
I've spoken to sellers that are like, well, it's a bad time to sell now. The market's slowing down. okay, yes, the market's slowing down, but most sellers also need to buy in the end. And the market is just providing more opportunity for buyers. One of the biggest problems we had during the crazy market was people were almost afraid to sell because they also had to buy. And they might have 2 or 3 months to find a place, and they lose in multiple offers 10 times, and all of a sudden
they're having to find a rental property, or they're going and living in a hotel. I mean, really, now you hit the nail on the head. It is the best time to sell because you can take your time a little bit, right?
Exactly.
Put your property on the market, start looking, and if you see something you really like, drop the price enough to attract a quicker sale.
Yep.
If not, we price it in and around the market, hopefully not too high. But again, that we can be within that average day on market, right? Whether it's 15 days, 40 days, whatever the case might be. But knowing those tracks, knowing we're on the right price, and knowing the average days on market in that price range can help you then plan out your purchase timeline, right? So it's a lot more advantageous. And kind of going on that track, maybe let's switch over. Let's talk a little bit about buyers in this market right now. Because in my opinion, I mean, it's called a buyer's market for a reason. I mean, the funny thing is, and you see it in the tabloids, and you see it talking to people, anytime we hit a buyer's market, there's actually not just fear from the sellers, but there's fears from the buyers.
Yeah.
And it's a market for them.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. So what we see is in a seller's market, we see buyers that are just climbing over each other trying to get property, and yet it's a prime market for the sellers, not necessarily the buyers.
Absolutely.
Inventory's down and buyers are just scrambling. And at the time, value is, well, if I pay $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 more and I get a place, great, that's what I want. Then all of a sudden things shift and the total mindset totally shifts. Ooh, well, things aren't selling as fast, so maybe I should be cautious and take my time before I buy. Maybe if it's going to start going down, I need to wait and see if it's going to bottom out before I start buying. Because I always want to buy at the bottom. Yeah. But in my opinion, you can't, and I think this is the opinion of many realtors and many real estate professionals, you can't time the bottom.
Absolutely not.
Right?
We never know.
We never know. Nobody knows. I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, Mark might, but I don't know if it actually works anymore, right?
In the shop.
There you go. See? I mean, nobody has a crystal ball that can say on, September 21st, 2018, we're going to hit the bottom of our real estate market and it's going to start going up. Because if that was the case, everyone would wait till that day and then it would be just a frenzy again. I mean, seriously, let's be honest when we're talking here. So, buyers, now's the time that you guys can actually go out and start looking, start making offers. In fact, it's actually fun now to be a buyer because you can go back to the old days and negotiate.
Yeah. I mean, you can even have a subject or two in your offers.
It's
craziness.
Say it ain't so.
I don't know. I don't know what's happening out there.
No, I mean, but it's true. And I mean, already I'm starting to see, week-long subjects, 2-week-long subjects.
Yep.
You can actually start to take your time, get your due diligence done on a property. We're not seeing the no inspections happening. And that's a good thing for you as a buyer because you're protected that way. You have the assurance you can do an inspection. You know you're going to be able to get your financing. You're not going to be scrambling. But again, you're not in real estate if you're not buying property. You're not making those offers. So to wait, all you're doing is you're waiting till the market starts picking up and you're already behind. So having the right strategy for your purchase now, whether the market's going to go down or not, and again, we don't know it's actually going to go down. This is somewhat reminiscent of when the foreign buyer's tax was first introduced. We had a 6-month kind of slowdown and then it ramped back up. We've just had a lot of government intervention now. And it's slowed down. So is it going to be just an adjustment period or is it the actual slowdown?
Yeah.
It's to be seen at this point.
Traditionally, the market pauses when the government starts to interfere a lot as people get used to whatever the new rules happen to be, what the new law of the land is. And then once people get used to it and figure out what to do about it and how it affects them, then off they go maybe in another direction. Like you mentioned with the foreign buyer tax, the house market kind of stopped. Once the foreign buyer tax came in, and 6 months later, the condo and townhouse market took off like a rocket.
Absolutely.
So people took a look at what the lay of the land was. They decided that there was going to be better value in condos or townhouses at that point, and away they went.
Absolutely. And so here's kind of where I'm sitting here thinking, and here's some tips for you as the buyers. One, if you're a buyer looking for a personal residence, why wait? Especially if you're renting right now. If you're renting, stop paying someone else's mortgage and go pay your own. But Cameron, what if my property value drops 10%? So what? You've bought in. If it drops a little bit, as long as you can cover your monthly payments, you got a good paying job, all these things, it's your home, right? It's regardless if the market drops on and you're renting, you're better off building that equity. It's like a forced savings plan every time you pay that mortgage down.
Every mortgage payment you make, you're paying down the equity with at least close to 50% of that mortgage payment. So even if the value goes down a bit, so what? If you're not going to sell it, it's all just on paper.
And let's say the market drops for a year and it goes down 10%. But your plan is that you're going to be living there for 5 years. And the 5 years, it ends up gaining, it drops 10% and then gains another 30. Guess what? You're ahead 20% on that property anyways, and you're planning to stay there for 5 years anyways. These market shifts that we see in the price drops are never permanent. It's very cyclical. We're going to go up, we're going to go down, we're going to go up. But the overall trend in the last 50, 60 years has been what?
Yeah, exactly.
It's going up.
If I go on to any website right now that tracks these things and I pull a graph over the last 40 years, you can draw a fairly straight line from 40 years ago to now. Yes, there's some that'll be higher, some that'll be lower and whatnot, but in the end, it goes up. And,
totally.
Downturns, shifts, they're always temporary. That's what history tells us.
And really, it's the herd mentality. When the herd is all running one way, you need to go against the grain, right?
Absolutely.
You said that you had a good quote there earlier today when we were talking. What was that quote?
Oh yeah, there was a quote from Warren Buffett: "Be greedy when people are fearful, and be fearful when people are greedy."
So right now, people are fearful. So it's time that you get into the market. Now, it kind of segues. Now, our team does do a lot of work with investment real estate. It's kind of what we're known for. So investors, now's, in my opinion, your best time to start buying. I mean, a lot of my investors and a lot of your investors made a lot of money in the seller's market because they timed it right. They bought. They still had to buy. Like in one case, I think we bid over $100,000 over the asking price, and then my client still made a ton of money on that property. But now's kind of the time, in my opinion, where you can really be strategic about your portfolio. You're not just trying to pick up anything you can, right? Now is like, okay, I want to add X number of cash flowing properties. So our vacancy rate right now is still very, very low. Yep. And in fact, I think that's going to stay low even with this market shift because we have so much immigration right now coming in between people coming in from around Canada and also immigrants coming into Canada that I think that vacancy is going to stay low. The projections of, I think it was City of Langley, was that they're expecting another 30,000 people or something.
Something crazy.
And they're building, 3,000 units?
Yeah.
That's 10%. So what's the other 90% going to do? They're either going to buy if they can, or they're going to be renting. So targeting very strong potential cash flowing properties is a great thing to do right now. And you can negotiate. That's the best part. Absolutely. So run your numbers, figure out if it's a strong cash flow, and even if the vacancy rate increases and rents drop a little bit, do you still have that buffer room for them to drop, 10, 20, 30, $40, right? And from there, you start adding to your portfolio right now as it's a good time for hold properties. I mean, you're locking down, you can cherry pick the best deals.
Absolutely. And Cameron and myself and Kelly and the rest of the agents on the team, we've been working with investors for a long time. If you're unsure about your numbers, make sure you get together with a realtor that knows what they're looking for, that knows how to run numbers and analyze market trends and knows how to look for cash flow, and that you talk to that person about your plan and what you want to do. Do you want to, build a portfolio of 10 or 20 properties, or do you want to do one or two? Do you want condos? Do you want houses? And we're all happy to sit down with you, go over your plan, help you improve the parts that need to improve, and support you in the parts that maybe are already great.
And the fact too that we're active investors ourselves and we're working with investors consistently, we know where the best target markets are for cash flow. I'm not going to turn around and tell you to go into the Brentwood area to go buy a rental property, because you're going to pay, especially for condos right now, $750,000 for a 1-bedroom, and it'll rent for $1,200. You're not going to make cash flow.
So a few years ago, what were you hearing when you told people go invest in Mission?
Oh, that's hilarious, because when I first moved here, I didn't have any opinion of the Lower Mainland and what's a good area, what's a bad area, right? I came from Edmonton. And so immediately I looked at Mission and I said, man, there's cash flow to be had here. Single family homes with a suite in the basement, huge cash flow potential. And when I started telling people this, I kept being told, oh, Mission, why would you ever want to live there or buy there or even deal with tenants in Mission? And nothing against anyone in Mission, but this was the Vancouver people saying this. but I started selling Mission as much as I could, and I tried to change that perspective. Then suddenly now, even recently in the last couple of months, I get told, hey, I've really been thinking about buying in Mission now. I think there's lots of opportunity. And I say, well, there is still some opportunity, but the big cash flowing opportunities are gone now. Prices have risen so much. Like, I'm super pumped that I bought a property out in Mission because our property value has risen, but I don't think it would cash flow as much. Like, my cash flow is huge because rents just continue to skyrocket. As I had tenant turnover, I'd raise it another $50 and another $50. And a lot of my investors who bought, they were buying. Okay, here's one that's crazy here. Think about this. Suited property with 3 bedrooms up, somewhat renovated, and 2 bedrooms down, okay renovations. Yep. 9,000 square foot lot. Where else can you find 9,000 square foot lot anymore? A lot of dirt. How much do you think that went for 3 years ago when I sold it to my client?
I would guess in the 500,000 range.
In Mission, I sold her that unit for $365,000.
Wow.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Now that property would sell for probably $650, guaranteed. I just sold one not too far that I sold for $640.
So in 3 years, the value's doubled.
Value's doubled. And again, Mission was an area people were like, oh God, Mission. Now it's like, oh, I can actually buy dirt in Mission. I can get a full house. I can sell my condo in Burquitlam and actually move and have a whole house. Oh my God, let's do it. Got the West Coast Express.
Exactly. Guess what? You can be in downtown Vancouver for work in an hour and 10 minutes on a nice train ride that's pretty comfy. You got a table, you can have a nap. And when you get home, you got a big piece of land, you got some wilderness and some outdoors, you can relax.
So right now, I mean, using this concept, I mean, surround yourself with an agent that knows what they're doing in investment real estate and start adding to these to the portfolio while you're waiting. Where would you recommend, if we're looking at single detached right now, Mark, where's the best areas to buy single detached?
Well, believe it or not, Chilliwack is doing quite well these days.
Say it ain't so. Got to go all the way out to Chilliwack.
The whack.
I got to drive an extra half an hour.
Yeah, an extra half an hour. But I've had, several clients and friends that have lived here in the Tri-Cities and Burnaby that have sold their detached here, made a killing on it, and moved out to the whack because they get so much more for their money out there, and it's just a different lifestyle.
And Chilliwack's really not that far away.
No.
I mean, when I grew up in Alberta, we had to travel. Like, I lived in the burbs, and I went sometimes. I mean, I wasn't that far away, but when I lived on the acreage, it was an hour drive, and we did it all the time. Chilliwack's not that far away, and most people who live out there play, work out there.
Absolutely. I mean, rents are just almost as strong out there as they are in Abbotsford and Mission and further into the west.
Totally.
Companies like Molson's are building a brand new brewery out there.
That thing's massive.
Exactly.
It's like, 400,000 square feet building?
Exactly. That'll probably be several hundred people that place alone will employ.
Absolutely.
I mean, they've got an airport. They've got, it's all there.
Totally. So again, it comes down to surround yourself with the right team. If you're going to be an investor, know where it makes sense and just target it. Make sure your strategy is buying right while the market's shifting. And even if you were to buy a property that's cash flowing today and the cash flow is strong enough that property, even if that property value drops 10% again, but you're investing for the concept of cash flow and equity pay down, which are the two more guaranteed return centers anyways, that's where you're going to be safe, even investing in a market that's maybe going down a little bit. Versus saying, I'm just going to wait till it hits the bottom, and then all of a sudden you're seeing all these new articles that the values are going up again, the inventory's dropped, and now you're scrambling to go and buy something because you missed the bottom. Buy now, ride out a downturn as long as you bought properly, and you'll end up being ahead in the long run at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Have a long-term plan. I mean, really, if you think about it, as long as you're not having to put any money into the property because your rents are covering everything, and you do nothing else, you hold that property for 25 or 30 years and it's paid off.
And I mean, even flippers in this market, if you're flipping a house, flipping a condo, there does create opportunity. We're not going to see the properties maybe flip as fast, but again, now's the time where you can make your money on the buy, right? Yep. So if you find a property that's got a decent enough spread that okay, I'll make my profit if I buy it at full list here, and then I'll sell it at what the current comps are saying now. but I can maybe negotiate them down 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe $30,000. That's just increasing your overall spread, and your overall risk goes down because you have that extra money to be able to last maybe an extra month if it doesn't sell fast enough, or to drop the price and say, okay, I've got enough room, I can drop the price to make it more competitive. So again, there's still ways to make money in both the purchasing aspect and holding, or even the flip if you do it right. It's just adjusting your current plan to a new market.
Yep, just do your homework. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure your numbers are solid. And again, having a team around you of people that understand what you're doing and are able to add value to what you're doing. I mean, this market, the way it is, the people who were flipping, for example, and didn't know what they were doing, but they won anyway because the market just went up so fast. It didn't matter what the quality of the renovations were or anything. Those people
We saw a lot of those.
Yeah, and those people are going to be disappearing out of this market fairly soon because that doesn't work if the market's slowing down.
Absolutely.
So if you're good at what you do and you find a decent property, it's still going to happen.
I mean, at the very end of the day, this is the Lower Mainland. We see this cycle happen all the time. In fact, the headlines 30 years ago was, oh, market's going, it's too high, it's going crazy. And that was when properties were like $80,000 to $100,000, maybe $150,000. I mean, the cycle continues. We're seeing a slowdown. It's no different than any other time in our market history. So now's the time to adjust. But don't be afraid to be in the market is the main thing. Because history has shown those who take advantage in this market and buy and lock stuff in, when that market shifts back and inventory drops, we're going to see those prices rise, and that's where the money is going to be made. Both if you're an investor or just as a homeowner, it's better to be in the market than not be in the market. Ladies and gentlemen, shift happens. Get over it. But I think that kind of concludes our talk. We've given a lot of different advice on both sellers and buyers, what you can do to make sure you're getting in the market or you're being able to stage your properties properly and still get out of the market if that's your goal. Don't be afraid of a buyer's market. And again, we don't know if this is truly a buyer's market. We're more, there, in a lot of aspects, we're still showing a seller's market in a lot of areas, or we're showing a balanced market. Only some areas are showing buyer's market. But again, we don't know how long this is going to last. If it's going to be a 2-month thing while the market adjusts, or if it's going to be a 10-year thing. There won't be a 10-year thing, believe me.
No, not a chance.
But again, be prepared that the market is shifting and adjust your plans is really what we're saying. But there's no reason to panic. There's no reason to flee the market and try to go elsewhere because this is Vancouver. The likelihood of Vancouver just bottoming out and never going back up is never going to happen because the key aspects here are we're surrounded by mountains on one side, the ocean on the other, and the border down to the States. There's nowhere else for us to go, and yet people want to live here. So as that track continues, property values are still going to go up. Absolutely. So get in the market, give us a call, give myself, Mark, anyone on our team a call. We're more than happy to sit down with you, have a consultation, and help you get from point A to point B, whether it's buying and selling for your own personal residence or helping you with your investment plans. That's what we're here for. Mark, I do appreciate you joining me on the vlog today. I know you've been super busy these days as well, as we all have. So again, it's awesome having a guest. If you guys enjoyed having Mark on the podcast with me, make sure you go and give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Give us that 5-star. Give us some feedback, what you thought about Mark and myself and tag team in this today. Mark, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anytime. Happy to talk with your listeners.
Perfect. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it for our podcast today. Again, if you guys have any questions and you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me both on Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag ManningUpRE. That's hashtag ManningUpRE. Ask me questions, and I'm more than happy to answer those questions for you on this podcast. Also, if you're an Anchor listener, feel free to leave me a voicemail. I can play those voicemails on Anchor here and then answer your questions live on the next podcast. So super cool there. Depending on what platform you're on, I'm on most of them: Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. Feel free to drop me any ratings there. I do appreciate that. And connect with me, guys. I'm on all the different social media. Let's connect. Let's see what I can do to help you out with your real estate needs. And don't forget, if you're wanting more content or more tips and tricks, you can go to youtube.com/Cameron Manning for a weekly show there where I give weekly advice for both realtors, investors, and just some general vlogs so you can see what I'm doing out in the market. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys in 2 weeks.